All right, Cara, and I'm so thankful you took the time to spend with us today to kind of talk to some of the students about PLIQ. And let's start with you explaining a little bit about who you are, how you got interested in pharmacy, and when you started and when you graduated. Just kind of give everybody a timeline.
Okay. So my name is Cara. I'm from Newcastle, Oklahoma. So kind of a small town, but a suburb of Oklahoma City. I became interested in pharmacy in high school. I had always known I wanted to be in the medical field somehow, but I really hated blood and guts. So one of my classmates actually got me on at the independent pharmacy in town. And that's when I was first really introduced to pharmacy and what it is. Before I had no clue. And I was like, wow, this is really awesome. It gives me a chance to be involved in the medical field and things like that, not have to really touch a whole lot of people or do any of the stuff I didn't like. And I really got to see them really care for the patients. I saw how the people of the community really came in and trusted them with, their lives basically, and trusted their opinions on things. And I really liked that aspect of feeling trusted in the community and being able to help people with things and help them understand things that were beyond what they understood. So the pharmacists that I work for, they actually went to Southwestern, and then one of my high school teachers, she went to Southwestern. And so I hadn't really heard of Southwestern before. And so I really looked into it after all of their encouragement. And I was like, this looks like it's the place for me. Coming from Newcastle, a smaller town, similar to the size of Weatherford, I was like, that'd be a lot easier transition than going to somewhere big like OU, which I had wanted to go to, being a huge OU fan my whole life. And they had a pharmacy school. It was really tempting. But then I got some scholarships out there, and that really helped make my decision. I started pharmacy school January of 2016 and then just graduated December of 2019.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about when you were in school and started that first semester, which tends to be a little shock to the system for most, when it would have been your 1.2 when you first got introduced to the idea of PLIQ really seriously. So tell me a little bit about why it interested you, why you decided to take on that challenge and that extra work.
So for me, I think it was a couple of our professors. I want to say Dr. Saluja, really, when he was really trying to promote the MBA program, he kept talking about and emphasizing, all of you are going to graduate with the same degree. You're all going to walk out of here with a PharmD. So how are you going to set yourself apart from the rest of the market? He always said, how are you going to have that extra feather in your hat, is what he always said. And so I had a couple friends who were above me in the program that I had known from undergraduate, and they were involved in PLIQ. So kind of from them, I was able to really ask questions about what the program was, and they just couldn't talk enough about it and how much they loved it and how unique it was compared to the MBA program. They were like, this is a unique opportunity that, only our school has, nowhere else has it. And so it'll really help you stand out and set yourself apart from the rest of the competition when you graduate. And they were like, we just honestly, truly love it and everything that we're learning. So for me, I've always liked being in kind of leadership roles or learning about that. And I had a really great manager at the pharmacy I worked at when I first started pharmacy school and wanted to be like her. And I didn't really know what innovation or quality outcomes meant. Actually, before my PLIQ interview, I had to ask what innovation meant from one of my friends that was in the program. So if they asked me about it, I knew what it meant. But the leadership part really stood out to me at first, wanting to really develop those skills, knowing that in the future I would be leading people and wanted to lead people and learn more about it.
So as you got into the classes, talk to me a little bit about each of the classes as you went through. So what did you get out of them? What surprised you in them? So if we start with leadership and then go to innovation and quality outcomes, what was kind of the experience in each of those areas?
So I really liked leading pharmacy change. So initially I had thought it was a lot about leadership, in which it was, but I think more what I got out of it was, I liked in the beginning we took a bunch of assessments. And so I initially thought, these are all going to be about me. And what we learned when we broke them down and we're looking at each of the assessments, we learned about a lot more about other people and people who are different than us, and how, our employees or people we work with are going to be different than us. They're going to be different leaders. They're going to be different learners. They're going to be motivated differently. And that part I really liked. And I liked that the course was focused on leading pharmacy change. And I love that I really learned about, that change is not bad. Change is good. A lot of, people older than us and that have been in pharmacy for a long time are very, set in their ways and how things have always been, and don't really like change, or change really kind of, scares them too. And so I really like that we learned a lot about how change is good and sometimes really vital and necessary, and how to really embrace it, learn the why behind it, realize that, and then be able to translate that to our team and other people and be able to fiercely lead that change and help carry it out. So that's what I really liked about that part. The innovation class, it had scared me at first because I don't really think of myself as being good at coming up with ideas. I've always thought of myself as someone like, I can see something and be like, yeah, that's not really working. But I don't really know what's a better way to fix it. But I just know that's not it. And so I was always kind of nervous about that class, just thinking that I was going to have to come up with an idea and worried that it would take me forever. I would just have that, be frozen and just worry about not being able to come up with an idea versus thinking through the process. And so I loved the innovation class of us learning that it's a process, and we'd start off small and then it just kind of happens and you learn how to innovate and even take some of the wildest ideas that you're like, that is so off the wall, would never work, and us actually thinking through it and thinking it to the end and developing it into something that can work. And so that was honestly a really fun class. One that had scared me at first turned into one of my favorites. And then the quality class, at first I really had no idea what that meant. And then now quality outcomes is so huge everywhere. In big hospital systems, they have complete departments dedicated to quality improvement and quality outcomes. And learning in our class, different streamlined processes of learning how to take a problem and really go through the steps and trying to figure out, why is this going wrong? Why are we getting these bad results? How can we improve the process to get these better outcomes for not only our patients, but our healthcare system? Learn how to, in big corporate worlds or big health systems, learn how to save money, how are we being wasteful? How can we save that? And those are very vital skill sets that are needed everywhere. And so that's kind of what I took from each of those classes.
So when you moved into your rotation time, right, and got into the rotations, let me back up one step. So one of the things that as a cohort you work on is you go through the classes and then you do some work with creating a program, doing something good for the college. And that morphs from group to group as they kind of envision what they want that to be. What was that process like for your cohort? And what did you take away from that? Because that's really taking application of some of what we learn and really starting to then try to do something specific with it.
So my cohort, I'm trying to remember if we originally came up with it or if we fed off the people above us and developed it. But the mentor program is what we really ran with. And it was really good coming together and hearing everybody's different ideas, because everybody probably thinks of a mentor differently just because of how they've maybe experienced different mentors in their life and how they impacted them. So it was good to come together as a group and share ideas, because then we were able to cater to a wider range of people instead of, people, if you're just one person coming up the program, just being able to cater to people just like you. Or we had people in our cohort that didn't all come from SWOSU. Like I did all my undergraduate at SWOSU, but there were others in either our cohort or the cohort above us that were transfers. And so there were a lot of things that I think at SWOSU, when we start the pharmacy program, that are just natural to us because we've been at SWOSU for undergraduate, that we don't think to share with the other students, like, oh, this is over here. And they're like, well, where the heck is that? Or we use our slang and different terms that we've used and learned for different things for so long that they're like, I don't know what that means. And so it was good having their perspective too, to be able to help some of these incoming students or these transfer students being able to transition. So I really loved that program and being able to give back to the school in that way with my time and my energy, and was able to really develop some good relationships that still I hold on to today. And a lot of people still ask me, a lot of my mentees still ask me questions whenever they think of something. So I really loved getting to be that resource and us being able to jumpstart that program to help other students, because I think it gave a lot of people a lot more hope, or some people that may have not made it or quit or would have had issues got to really continue and had a resource to go to for all their questions or things they didn't feel comfortable asking, you know, maybe professors or things like that. So just giving them a point of contact and being able to work that program and work together and kind of see it through was really fulfilling.
So when you moved into rotations, how did, as you went through the different rotations, what kind of help or usefulness did you see from the different classes you took through the PLIQ program? Was it applicable?
Yes, I definitely think that it was. And I think it helped me to stand out versus other students, especially when I was on those rotations where we were there together. Because the things that we learn in those classes are applicable to any setting and every setting, and even beyond pharmacy. But different things at different rotations. So like in a big healthcare system, they would talk about different projects or things that they were doing or things they were doing differently to help out maybe the quality department. And it was good for me because I was able to understand what they were talking about and the reason behind it, versus the other students were kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. And it's like, no, there's a purpose behind that. You know, someone's collecting data to try and make a change or try to improve something. And then on other rotations, whenever coming up with projects, or, you know, like I had an independent pharmacy and they had some issues with, you know, trying to improve their workflow. And also at the same time I started, they had a new employee and they were having a hard time training because they hadn't trained a new employee in so long. And so from these classes, I really loved brainstorming or loved digging into problems and trying to solve them, versus I think in my other classes, if I wouldn't have had this skill set or gone through these classes that taught me these different processes, I probably would have been more passive and kind of just like, oh, well, that's, you know, I'm like, this is y'all's problem. I don't work here. So, you know, that's up to you guys. Versus they really valued, you know, that I was interested and intrigued and wanted to help them with their processes and had ideas. And I think it was very valuable to them.
So when you decided you were going to, when you graduated and moved past the rotation phase and started to go out, how did that influence the job you took, where you're at, how your career looks, or what is expected of you?
So I think PLIQ truly helped me a lot in actually one of my my second rotation was with a Walmart neighborhood market health and wellness director, or a district manager. And I hadn't worked for him. I worked in the super center, so I'd never met him before. I'd never been to his stores. And him seeing my interest in going around with him and that whole rotation honestly was basically my interview, because at the end of I had his rotation in February, and then my last rotation was in November, and at the end of October he offered me a job. I didn't even interview, which is out of the norm, especially with how competitive the market and stuff is these days. and how saturated it is, that was very different. And I think it's because of the skill set that I was able to show him and the interest that I had during his rotation that he wanted to offer me a job. Now, I ended up taking a different job, but still with Walmart, but a different job. But I had to interview for that one. But for his not being able to have to do an interview, I think I really stood out to him based off some of these skills that I learned in the PLIQ program. Like I said, by going around with him to his different stores, helping him problem solve, and how, because he's being in the position that he's in, he's one of the ones that has to bring down the information for change, for leading pharmacy change. And he has to motivate a lot of his managers and employees to carry those things out. And I think just through our discussions and just how I was able to talk through some of those things are skills that I learned in the PLIQ program. And I think that really stood out to him, because a lot of other pharmacists don't come into a job thinking that way or having that mindset or that skill set. A lot come in just to, dispense medications and go home. They don't like the extra work. They don't like the extra changes or all of the metrics, because maybe the metrics scare them because they don't understand them. They don't understand why we have them or what they measure, what they really tell about them. They think it's just demands brought down by corporate that they're, restricted and constrained by, versus really he loved when people came up with new ideas to share with the rest of the market on how they improve certain areas. And I think he saw a lot of potential in me. And I definitely think that I owe a lot of that to the PLIQ program for sure.
So when you interviewed with Walmart,
Mm-hmm.
another job that you ended up taking, or any other interviews you had, were you asked about PLIQ? Did they already know what it was? Did it become a point of conversation in the interview to help differentiate yourself?
I wouldn't say that it directly came out, but Walmart in their interviews asked a lot of situational based questions. So they would say, name a time that you had to do this, and walk me through the steps and what was the outcome. Or they asked a lot of questions about, so did you start a project, go through the process, and what was the outcome? And so I didn't directly talk about PLIQ, but in a way, a lot of the skill sets that I learned, I was able to incorporate into the questions. That helped me come up with my answers or walk them through the process, versus if I didn't, I wouldn't know the purpose behind those questions. Like they really wanted some hard data on some questions, like, walk me through a process. And so I think learning, like in leading pharmacy change and quality outcomes, we learned a lot about processes, and being able to talk about those and being able to talk about it in the language that I learned in those classes. And I think it really impressed them, and really helped me land a position, because it made me sound more educated, versus I didn't learn any of that type language or that type stuff in my other courses at all. And so I think that's something definitely unique to the PLIQ program, because they really don't, in the interview, they don't ask you any clinical based questions. They don't ask you what you learned in your pharmacotherapy course at all. They ask you they want to see how you can interact with people, how you can, help grow the business, and there are clinical aspects, but it's on quality outcome measures. So it's around adherence and immunizations and things like that, not based on, what pharmacotherapy knowledge do you have? That's not a factor. And so I definitely think the PLIQ program helped prepare me for that.
You think part of that is just because everybody has to pass the same test to get licensed to practice? So if you pass the test.
Yeah, especially in the retail setting, or pretty much anywhere besides like a really clinical based setting, you have the degree, you have the license, so you are legally able to do what the guy next to you can. And so you're licensed, they're able to put you in there. You can fill prescriptions and verify prescriptions, but are you going to make a difference once you're there? Are you going to help improve? Are you going to care about those patients? Are you going to bring quality to them that's more valuable to them than anything else? And so that's what's going to keep bringing the patients back to your store. That's what's going to keep bringing them back is how you run your store, how you operate, because you're given a lot of freedoms in how you manage your people. They aren't there micromanaging you in your everyday relationships with these people. You're given a lot of freedoms. And so it's like, are you capable of doing this? Are you able to work with others and to help develop them? Because it's a team effort when you're there. You're not by yourself. You're not sitting behind a computer just verifying prescriptions by yourself. It is a whole team effort to make it through the day a lot of times. So, and to be successful. And so I think that's a lot what they're looking for, because I've had a lot of classmates. I still have a lot of classmates without jobs. And I think a lot of it is because they don't have those interview skills. They don't have those leadership skills. They didn't learn those. They thought graduating, I would just get a job and I'm owed it. I'm owed a job because I graduated pharmacy school, or I'm owed this residency because I graduated pharmacy school. Like I got straight A's, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a well-rounded person and someone who's going to be, fun to work with, who's going to have great ideas, who can really help their program, because they want your help developing the program for future students or future residents as well. And so I think we get a unique opportunity for residencies as well.
So one of the things that you did that's a little different than students in the PLIQ program overall is that you also did the MBA at the same time. So you did both, and obviously were successful at both. So my question for you is if there's students that are considering doing both or trying to decide between the two, what advice would you give them?
I would say I probably initially went into it with the wrong reasons for the MBA. I was looking for those extra letters at the end of my name. And I would say at the end of the day, I learned and got way more quality of education out of the PLIQ program, and the stuff that I learned in PLIQ, I use a lot more than I do from the MBA program. So maybe if I were in a more management or like district manager type position where they focus more on the business aspects, so the P&L, the profits and loss, and that type stuff, the real hard numbers, I think I would use that more. But every day what I use more is the skills I learned in PLIQ, because they don't warn you in pharmacy school how hard it is to work and manage people. Like whenever you get out there as a pharmacist, even as a staff pharmacist, when your manager isn't there, or when there's like another floater there, like you are in charge, or when you're the only pharmacist there, you are in charge. You're in charge of that team of people, and you've got to know how to work with them and deal with their everyday life that comes into it. Versus the MBA program, I learned a lot about numbers and statistics and those kind of analytics, which, like I said, might come in handy if I were to go more towards that side. But I would say that the PLIQ program is more applicable to the everyday. And then also, I would say if you're trying to decide, I would say the PLIQ program is a lot less demanding than the MBA program. The MBA program, you have to take 11 extra courses, and you're taking one every single semester that you're in pharmacy school, and they're at night, versus the PLIQ program is easy. There's 3 courses. One of them is built into your I keep wanting to say extracurriculars, not extracurriculars, but your electives. That's the E word I'm looking for. Electives. It's built into your electives, and then the other 2 are in the summer. And so it does not bog down your normal semester coursework load at all. It's a lot more manageable. And then I would say I got a lot more out of those 3 courses than I did the 11 MBA courses that I took. I would honestly say that. And having an MBA didn't help get me my job. You don't have to have an MBA to get a management position in pharmacy at all. So not that it was a waste. I'm glad I did it. I learned some other things there too, but I would say the more that I got more quality and what I used more was from the PLIQ program.
Would you say, just taking one step back, even with the expectations during the year um, between leadership and when you go into rotations in that kind of section of time, there are responsibilities kind of to the college for being in the program. Is that manageable as well, would you say, for students that are a little concerned about that? Like the mentorship
Can you
program.
repeat that or?
Well, like the mentorship program, the workshops, the
Oh,
things your cohort is responsible for between when you finish leadership, that next fall through when you
yeah.
leave on rotations, you have those responsibilities. Is that still manageable, do you think, for students who are a little concerned about that time commitment?
Definitely. I didn't think it was very demanding at all. Now, also, I was a person that took on a whole lot. Like I did the MBA program, and then I took a lot of leadership roles in organizations. But even with having all that, and plus the mentorship program, or going to help out with talking to new students, or the new semesters that are going to be applying, I didn't think it took up a ton of my time at all. So, like I said, the classes where we had one during school semester and then the other two were in the summer. So I mean, it wouldn't even take a whole hour out of a week. The mentorship program was, it's kind of how you make it and how much you put into it too. So if you pour into those students a lot, you're going to get a lot out of it too. And so, which I think it helps you too, because you feel like you're helping somebody, and you can also learn new things or questions you never thought of. They're like, oh, I probably should have asked that. I need to know that. But it didn't take up a ton of my time. It was very, very manageable.
So tell everybody where you're at now in your career, because I think they'll be interested to know kind of where you've landed now that you've been out a little while.
Yes. So, like I said, for my rotation in February from the neighborhood market district manager, I was offered a job. And then about a month later, I was asked if I would take a position at a different store in the super centers. And it is is the busiest store in our market. And I was approached about that one. So then I interviewed and I took it. So I'm a staff pharmacist at a Walmart Supercenter in Dell City, and it is a store that is very, very busy. So it needs a lot of help in a lot of areas. Um, and I was very excited to take the position because I was very excited to get started as a pharmacist and be able to, make a difference in people's lives, how they did mine. And then watching my pharmacy manager that I worked with during school, how great she was. I was just like, I can't wait to finally get out there and be just like her and make a difference in someone like she did me. But so I'm working there and helping with try and get our metrics up and try and improve our quality of the store and our patient experience. And I'm really loving it. And I've also got the new opportunity with the pandemic to do some more clinical stuff as a pharmacist and help out with COVID testing. So I help do that 3 times a week. We do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings from 7 to 9 a.m. And that has been a unique experience too. So it's been very interesting. Um, but I eventually would really like to move up into management, and my boss knows that, and I think she's trying to help develop me into that, and then possibly even further from that someday. So we will see.
So for students who are watching this and are thinking about joining PLIQ, trying to make a decision whether they want to apply, what advice would you give them? Would you do it again?
I would definitely do it again. Just to maybe even get even more out of it than I did, ask more questions now that I've been out in the real world and see a lot of things in action. You get a different perspective than when you're in the class. You maybe not know it don't know what to expect. I would definitely encourage, of course I love it so much, I would tell everyone you need to do it. But I mean, if you really want to stick out from the rest of the crowd, which in this time the market is very saturated and you're going to need to stand out, I would say take the leap and do it. It's not that big of a time commitment, and what you get out of it is so invaluable. And you can apply it to every aspect of life, not just pharmacy, not just your workflow or things like that, but you learn a lot about people and how to work with other people. And so that can even help you in your personal life as well, or your family and things like that. So I definitely encourage anyone to to apply for it. It'll make you a better person. It'll make you a better pharmacist. It'll make you a better leader. And so it'll just make you better overall, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with everybody today and spend some time with them and tell them about your experience. And I can't wait to see what happens next for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I had fun. Thank you for having me.